Yeah. So, what do you guys want to ask? What are your questions?
I'm just overall questioning what's the evidence that you think Christianity is the truth? I'm just looking at the evidence on both sides.
Yeah, don't film them. Only film me. They don't want to be on film. So, the first would be the fulfillment of prophecy. Okay? So I'll give you two prophecies from two prophets. One from Malachi, one from Isaiah. In Isaiah chapter 2, verses 2 and 3, Isaiah prophesies this, that in the age of the Messiah, the Gentile nations would go up to Jerusalem to worship the God of Israel and to learn about his ways. And that the law of Yahweh would go out from Jerusalem to the furthest parts of the earth. Right? Now, after Christ is risen and ascended to heaven, the church goes out from Jerusalem preaching the gospel of Christ to the furthest parts of the earth. And in response to that, Gentile Christians start going on pilgrimage to Jerusalem. So centuries before Gentiles start going on pilgrimage to Jerusalem, it is prophesied, and the means by which that prophecy is accomplished and made true is through the life, death, resurrection, ascension of Jesus Christ. That's prophecy number one, example. Prophecy number two. In the book of Malachi, chapter 1, I think it's verse 8, but I might be wrong there. It says that there will come a time when around the world, day and night, unceasingly, that the nations, the Gentiles, will offer up incense to the Lord of hosts, and in his name worship, and offer up sacrifices to his name, and give out offerings of bread and wine. Now, since the resurrection of Jesus Christ, when the church has gone out into the world and established churches as everywhere, as part of our worship, we use incense. And we incense in the name of the Lord of hosts. Because when Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, he says, "Do you not know that I have 12 legions of angels at my disposal?" So he is the Lord of armies. He is the Lord of hosts. And we offer up incense in the name of Jesus. And that prophecy was centuries before Jesus, and it is now fulfilled, because night and day, all around the world, everywhere, the Gentile nations are offering up incense in the name of Jesus. Now, I'm sure you would agree that if prophecies are being given centuries before the events, and then the events are being accomplished according to the description of the prophecies, that this would be an evidence for the truth of the Christian faith. Right, so there you've got your first evidence. Would you like to discuss that, or would you like to move on to another question, or do you want me to give further evidence?
I have other questions as well, but I just want to write all the evidence you can give me so I can look at it.
I can give you a long list.
If you can, that'd be amazing.
Great. So the next evidence why Christianity is true and Islam is false, and this pertains to Christianity and Islam, is this: that Christians claim Jesus Christ was crucified. Muslims claim that Jesus Christ was not crucified. Now, brother, when two people have a disagreement and they are arguing over what is the fact, what is the reality, instinctively, what do? You look for other evidences. So here we have two groups that are arguing about whether Jesus Christ was crucified. What does the other evidence say? The other evidence, written by Roman pagans, by Jews who were not Christians, all state that Jesus Christ was crucified. So when you've got Jews, pagans, and Christians all agreeing that Jesus Christ was crucified, then you have a defeater to the Islamic position, which was that Jesus Christ was not crucified. And so you go with the evidence. Yeah? Because the Jews and the pagans, they haven't got a dog in the fight. And actually the Jews are against the Christians and the pagans are against the Christians. So when your enemies agree with you about something, that's a sure sign that it is true. Yeah? That'd be like every Christian agreeing that the Quran is the most perfect piece of Arabic poetry. That would be a strong argument in favor of Islam, you know, or a claim of Islam.
I understand.
But the point is, if Jesus Christ was crucified, Islam is false. Full stop. End of story. Okay, so you've got historical evidence that points to it. Now, as a continuation of that same argument, the fact that Jesus Christ rose from the dead is the ultimate proof of the validity of the Christian faith. Because Christianity stands or falls on the resurrection. If you can disprove the resurrection, Christianity collapses. But if Christianity is true, if the resurrection is true, Christianity is true, end of story. Would you agree?
Yeah, only one of those.
Yeah. So the point is, there's lots of evidence that points to the fact that the resurrection is true. Let me give you some of those evidences. Firstly, we have variable, independent, early sources that claim the resurrection of Jesus Christ in the Gospels. And those Gospels and in the letters of Paul are appealing to traditions that predate the writings themselves, thus testifying that the belief came before the writings, not because of the writings, right? Secondly, Jews whose holy day was a Saturday, for no reason at all, started to honor Sunday as a special day. There's no Jewish reason to do that. So something happened to make those Jews think that Sunday was a special day. It's undeniably accepted by anyone that's investigated it that Christianity started in Jerusalem. If Christianity was being made up, why didn't it start in Damascus? Why didn't it start in Alexandria? Why didn't it start in Rome? But it doesn't. It starts in Jerusalem. Why? Because the events described start in Jerusalem. Every historian who's ever talked about this topic agrees that something happened that convinced the first apostles that the person that they knew had died had come back to life. Now, even people like Dr. Bart Ehrman, who don't believe the resurrection really happened, do believe that something happened to convince people that the resurrection occurred. So let me ask you this question. What would convince you that a person you knew had died had come back to life?
I mean, I would just have to look at the evidence of why he did actually come to life. For example, like I see him, if I can touch him.
Thank you.
I need to have many evidence, and I have to encounter.
Exactly, you would have to encounter him. So exactly that kind of evidence is the evidence that we learn in the apostolic tradition. They say they saw Jesus. They say they touched Jesus. They say they heard Jesus. They say they ate with Jesus. And this is what convinced them that Jesus had risen from the dead. Now, other examples that point to the reality of the resurrection is that enemies of the Christian faith become Christians because they witness the risen Jesus. Paul was an enemy of the Christian faith. He persecuted the early church, and yet he goes from being a persecutor of the early church to adopting the religion that he persecutes. That is a radical change. Something happened to convince Paul that these enemies of his were telling the truth. And he gives his reason why. He says that he saw the risen Jesus. Now, he's not alone. You've also got James, the brother of Jesus, who was skeptical of Jesus' ministry before the crucifixion and resurrection. He's listed as one of the brothers of Jesus that thought that Jesus had somehow kind of gone mad. But then we find in the book of Acts that the same James that doubted his brother before the resurrection is one of the pillars of the church in Jerusalem. So in other words, something happened that changed James's mind. So it's not just the believers in Jesus that came to believe in the resurrection, but the enemies and the doubters of Jesus that came to believe in the resurrection. So when your believers, your enemies, and your doubters all agree that the resurrection happened, that points strongly to the reality of the resurrection. Here's another example. The only reason why Christians celebrate the cross is because of the resurrection. If Jesus had just stayed dead, there was a very Jewish thing to do when your religious leader dies. You venerate their tombs. Jesus even references that in the Gospels. He says to his enemies, he says, you venerate the tombs of the prophets. So that was the Jewish thing to do when a religious leader dies. You turn his tomb into a special place of veneration. But the early Christians didn't do that. What do they start to venerate? They start to venerate the cross. Why? Because they believe that Christ conquered death. And in Roman culture, the cross was the symbol of death. And so by venerating the cross, they are pointing out that Jesus is the victor over death. Imagine that I started a religion, brother, and I said to you, come and join my religion. We're going to celebrate the gas chamber. Does that sound weird? Come and join my religion. We're going to celebrate lethal injection. Come and join my religion. We're going to celebrate the hangman's noose. Do you see how weird that sounds on your ears? Well, that's exactly how weird to the Roman ears and to the Jewish ears it was to venerate and honor the cross. But yet that's exactly what happened. So something happened to the Christians to turn the symbol of the cross from a symbol of shame and humiliation and death to a symbol of triumph and victory. And the only thing that makes sense of that transformation is the resurrection. I think you've got enough to go on.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question. This is more an agnostic question. But how do you know which, since there's too many religions, this is a classic one, but how do you know which one is true? Since there's too many and you can't know?
Well, in a way, we've kind of already answered that question. If the resurrection is true, every other religion that disagrees with the resurrection is false. It's really that simple. If the resurrection occurred, Muhammad is a false prophet. If the resurrection occurred, Buddha is a false teacher. If the resurrection occurred, Krishna is a false god. If the resurrection occurred, Karl Marx is wrong. If the resurrection occurred, Nietzsche is wrong. If the resurrection occurred, Hitler is wrong. It all boils down to the resurrection.
But as in, for example, there's a person who just grew up agnostic, right? And then how does he know which one to go off of? For example,
you've got to look at the evidence.
Yeah, but like, how does he know that I should? Because there's many religions, right? How does he be like, oh, let me look at the, what's it called, crucifixion of Jesus? How does he pick? Because there's many religions that they say, yo, check out our claims.
Yes.
There's many of them.
So let's do an example. So Muslims make a claim that every Quran in the world is identically the same. We Christians have proven that claim to be false. Muslims have claimed that the Quran has never had the hand of man influence it. But we Christians have proven that claim to be false. The Quran claims that if this were from any other than Allah, the Quran would have no errors in it, no contradictions in it. But we've proven that claim to be false. So in other words, you judge each religion according to its own claims. And you judge each religion according to the claims of other religions, and it's simply the strongest religion wins. The resurrection of Christ has stood up against 2,000 years of criticism, 2,000 years of attempts to disprove it, 2,000 years of people trying to show that it's false, and they have all failed. Islam has only been tested by counterclaims in the last 100 years, because only in the West Islam doesn't have the political dominance to suppress debate like it does across the Muslim world. And it's only in the age of the internet that Islam has been subject to the level of criticism that it now is. And Islam is floundering intellectual. All the Dawagandists in this park run from the Christian intellectuals in this park because we've shown that Islam is busted. Muslims used to claim that Jesus wasn't crucified. Now Muslims are saying, yes, he was crucified. Muslims used to claim that all Qurans were the same. Now they say there are variant Qurans that all teach the same. Muslims used to claim that their hadiths were completely reliable. Now we find them even chucking Sahih hadiths under the bus. Muslims used to claim, ladies and gentlemen, that Constantine changed the religion of Christianity. They don't make that claim anymore. They used to claim that Muhammad was in the Gospel of John, chapter 14 to 16. They don't make that claim anymore. Muslims used to claim the idea that Christianity was that Jesus never claimed to be God in the Bible, or that the Bible never taught the Trinity. Now they don't make that argument. Again and again and again, we Christians are winning the intellectual argument in this park.
For example, you grew up in the middle of nowhere, right? There's millions of religions, right? There's Muslims. Going through each religion and disproving them, one would probably die by the time they disproved all of them, no?
Brother, you're making an argument from pragmatics. It's not my problem to solve. You're saying it's impractical to search all religions. Well, I would agree with you. Don't search all religions. Use your reason. Think about how God would speak. Firstly, you're looking for a religion that's ancient, not modern like the Baha'i religion, or the Mormon religion, or the Jehovah's Witness religion, or the Ahmadiyya religion. Because if God is going to speak, He's going to speak throughout all of history. Number two, look for the common thread of religion that shows a common strain to the religion. All religions, all ancient religions, practice sacrifice. Why? Because as you can see in the book of Genesis with Cain and Abel, God accepts and desires sacrifice in worship. And many religions practice sacrifice for atonement to sin. They understand that sacrifice is connected to sinfulness in the world. Why? Because that is something in the ancient religion. Furthermore, you're looking for a religion that practices monotheism. Why? Because if there were many gods with many wills, there would be wars amongst the gods, and there would be chaos in the universe. So my point is, bro, you don't have to research all religions. You can actually narrow it down. And when you narrow it down, actually, Islam is disqualified. It's disqualified because it's a new religion. No one knew about Islam until the 7th century. No one practiced Islam until the 7th century. In other words, it is a baby religion compared, ladies and gentlemen, to the Judeo-Christian faith. Next question.
Can you explain more on how we factor out religions out? Because to me, because there's so many religions, and it's important how we factor out. Because, for example, some religions with, for example, if I might be wrong here, in Hinduism, they believe technically there's all kinds of different gods are part of one god as well. So technically, it's not, they can't fight each other since they're all one god as well.
But the reality is,
How do we separate that?
actually, most religions in history have not believed in one God. Most religions in history are the equivalent to Hinduism. It's all right, he talks big until I come to debate him, and then when I come and debate him, watch him run. Would you like to debate? Would you like to debate? Oh, suddenly he's scared! Suddenly he's scared! Suddenly he's scared! He wants to heckle, but he's frightened to debate. He wants to heckle, but he's frightened to debate. Right. Exactly. Okay. I've proven my point. He can't debate. Thank you very much. Another Muslim running from debate. There you go. Proof. So.
Because this is for my friend who asked this question.
So let me address. There is a problem of adopting agnosticism to the extreme. If you adopt agnosticism as a philosophical position, what it does is it ultimately prevents you from commitment. And agnostics ultimately live by a dichotomy of thought. They have a contradiction in their thought, which is that they say we can't know what to commit to, whilst indisputably always committing to values and beliefs. And every agnostic that has any moral framework has committed themselves to values and beliefs, whilst telling us that we can't know what values and beliefs to commit ourselves to. And this is a contradiction within agnostic thought. And thank you. And so the point is, if a system is self-contradictory, it can't be true, can it? And when agnostics say we can't know what is true, but yet they live by values and beliefs that give them a moral framework, they're actually living out a contradiction in their own worldview. And that means that agnosticism is not true.
You said again, I'm a bit lost on why agnosticism is not true. Because
right.
That was not holding a position. How does that contradict?
Right, because every agnostic holds a position. Every agnostic I have ever met has a sense of right and wrong. Do you have a sense of right and wrong?
I think so. But
right. If you have a sense of right and wrong, although is that sense of right and wrong committed to certain values and beliefs?
I mean, as an agnostic person say it doesn't really matter. It just, I don't know. They would just say I would know.
You haven't answered my question.
Okay.
Do you agree that your commitment to a sense of right and wrong means that you are committed to a certain set of beliefs and values?
Yes.
Right. So, are you an agnostic yourself?
No.
Okay. Every agnostic I have met does the same thing you've just done. They commit themselves to beliefs and values, but then say in the next breath, we don't know what's true. So if you're committing yourself to beliefs and values in practice, while saying with your lips, I don't know what to commit myself to, you're living out a contradiction, and that's the problem with agnosticism.
But some people may not agree on practicing in some values. Like you said, some people would be like, I'm not practicing in anything.
But let me ask you a question as a Muslim, okay? Because I've just given you a disproof of Islam, right? There are problems within the Islamic worldview. So for example, you've got a place of pilgrimage in the Quran. The sanctuary, the furthest sanctuary, right? But it's never identified as Mecca. Nowhere in the Quran does it say that the place of pilgrimage for Hajj is Mecca. That's something that sources 120 years later tell you. Now let me ask you this question. If I ask you to believe something that was written 200 years after Jesus, would you be inclined to believe it?
I mean, I have to look at evidences of it. That's what I'm doing. That's why I came to you to ask for evidence of Christianity. I get evidence for technically any
but here,
that's why it links back to my question on how do I know which one is true, because there's many.
And so what I'm saying, I'm giving you reasons. I'm giving you reasons why you don't have to think you need to examine every religion.
Okay.
I'm also giving you reason and also giving you a framework by which you can test. You test the foundational claims of each religion. So the foundational claim of Christianity is that Jesus rose from the dead. If that claim is supported by evidence and stands up to scrutiny, then you have a reason to believe in Christianity.
I fully agree with you.
The foundational claim of Islam is that the Quran is a divine book that has never been changed and is free from error and contradiction. If you can find evidence that the Quran has been changed, and you can find evidence that the Quran has errors and contradiction, Islam collapses.
I agree.
Right, so there you go. This is the methodology that agnostics can use to identify a true religion.
Okay. I'll just say one more last thing. It's just the problem because I was also talking with my friend with this, and he said the same thing. Since there's so many religions out there, I can't go through each one looking at what they believe in. Some might just.
I've already addressed this. Maybe you weren't listening. But I've already said, I've already addressed this. You only need to examine the ancient religions.
Why only the ancient?
Because if God is going to speak to the world, would he not speak to the earliest humans?
Well, we wouldn't know that.
Right. Well, I would say that any God that waits until this point in history to start talking to us is already a suspect God. Another way that you can judge religions is you can look at the founders and you can ask, did the founders gain something from founding their religion? So, let me give you examples. Joseph Smith is the founder of Mormonism. L. Ron Hubbard is the founder of Scientology. Muhammad is the founder of Islam. Joseph Smith, L. Ron Hubbard, and Muhammad all profited financially, politically, and sexually from the foundings of their religion, from their religious activism, and from the foundings of their religion. Any prophet that gains for themselves because of the foundation of their religion is immediately suspect. But Jesus did not gain financially, did not gain sexually, and did not gain politically. Paul, one of the greatest followers of Jesus, did not gain politically, did not gain financially, and did not gain sexually. And so this is another way that you can examine who is a true religion. You can also see where is the history of the religion. Because Hinduism and the Greek religions of paganism, they have great mythologies, but none of those mythologies find evidence in history. But Christianity finds first century evidence for a first century religion. But Islam is devoid of 7th century evidence for a 7th century religion. For example, if you go to Mecca, they have museums, but those museums are empty of the kind of evidence that you would expect if Mecca was a great historical city.
I just disagree with the fact that you said we can only acknowledge all religions, because, for example, if I just see a guy flying and he's saying he's God and show me, I don't know, he just teleports me somewhere, I would believe he's God. And I don't know, he gives me many evidences of what he is, right? And he does it all supernaturally. I would believe he's God right there. It doesn't have to be an old religion to be true.
And God gives you, in the scriptures, God warns you not to believe in people just because of their miracles. Because if they speak in the name of another God, a God not known to Israel, the name Yahweh, if they speak in the name of another God other than Yahweh, even if they perform miracles, they're a false prophet. And so just because people perform miracles doesn't mean that they are teaching a true religion. Even the Quran says that the magicians of Pharaoh replicated some of the miracles of Moses. So just because someone does something magical or miraculous doesn't mean that they're teaching the truth. There needs to be more. And God warns us that false prophets will come and that they will perform wonders that, if it were possible, even the elect would be fooled. And one of the gods against following these false prophets is in whose name do they come? Which is another reason why we know that L. Ron Hubbard, that Muhammad were false prophets, because they come in the names of false gods.
What false gods? Basically, though, we have to. For example, the guy came up and he gives many evidences, so many, not just miracles, right? It doesn't make the religion false. For example, if a guy comes up here and gives me many evidences, so I can't just disclude all not old religions. If a guy comes up here, shows me miracles, evidences, many evidences, I would have to test his evidence as well. It doesn't directly become wrong. For example,
yeah, brother. I mean, you're talking about. No. But the point is, I find it strange that as a Muslim you've adopted your friend's position rather than ask me about about the Christian position. I have given you a methodology. Unless I've given you a methodology by which an agnostic can find truth. Right? Do you even remember what the methodology is?
Sense on how we can find between the right religion.
What was the methodology that I offered you?
Between how to find the right religion. Just gotta make sure the question, right? Between how we have many religions and how we can find the right one.
Correct. What was the methodology?
From what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, we can make certain criteria, and rule out religions that doesn't meet the criteria.
What's the methodology? I've given you a methodology. Because the point is, you're asking these questions, but unless you're paying attention to the answer. But the point is, I've given you a methodology, and you clearly haven't remembered the answer. And I think the reason why you haven't remembered the answer is because all you're doing is you're thinking about your next question. So I'll state the methodology one more time, and then I'm going to stop this conversation because you're not listening, and I'm going to let your friends ask some questions. The first point of the methodology is you're looking for an ancient religion. The second point of the methodology is you're looking for you're looking for those threads of the ancient religions that have some commonality amongst them. Thirdly, you're looking for religions that have roots, real roots in history, not just myth. Thirdly, you're looking for religions that have evidence that back up their fundamental claims, and you're examining the strength of the fundamental claim. And that is how an agnostic can discern true religions from false religions. And in every one of those tests, Islam fails and Christianity stands. Now, I've explained the methodology to you now multiple times, and because you weren't listening at least 2 other times, I'm now going to invite your 2 other friends to ask questions.
Thank you very much.
But I want to give you a gift because you've been a very polite and engaging human being, and I always enjoy that. So let me give you a gift. Do you have a gospel?
No.
Right, I'd like to give you a gospel then.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry,
Bear with me 1 second.
We have more time. I do want to discuss this more.
Yeah.
I'll think through it.
Bear with me 1 second.
Maybe I'm not getting it, but sorry if I don't.
No worries.
I'll let you guys go. It's fine if it's not. I don't have much space either, so. Thank you.
There you go. You can probably fit that in your pocket.
I can fit that in my pocket. Thank you.
Right, no worries. Yeah, really well. Good questions. Okay, brother, what's your questions?
I think it's from the Prophetic.
Yeah.
Who's Christian needs to understand what are the consequences and repercussions if you reject Islam in a Muslim country.
I'm sorry, I'm a bit distracted by the heat of this argument. Ask your question again.
So I'm saying if you're a resident or citizen of a Muslim country such as Iran or Saudi Arabia, what are the repercussions for being a Christian inside those Muslim countries?
So ladies and gentlemen, we must raise a voice to the fact that in every single Muslim country in the world, without exception, Christians are being persecuted.
No.
In Qatar, for instance, in Qatar, for instance, Christians live as second-class citizens. They don't have the same rights as Muslims. In Iran, Christians don't have the same right as Muslim citizens. In Saudi Arabia, Christians don't have the same right as Muslim citizens. In Pakistan, Christians are being bombed, Christians are being persecuted. He's feeding, good. So my point is, ladies and gentlemen, we must recognize that when Muslims dominate a society, Christians are persecuted. And that means that every Christian has a stake in the fight to roll back Islamization everywhere around the world. And we can and we have, like they did in South Sudan, like they did, ladies and gentlemen, in the Caucasus, like they are doing in Indonesia, like they are doing in Iran.
All right, another question is, politically we're seeing the political party of Nigel Farage offering a net zero migration and most importantly getting rid of all the sympathizers of Hamas, ISIS, Taliban. Would you support this 100%?
Okay, so the question is, do I support Nigel Farage's position that we should deport every Islamist sympathizer? Yes, and all of you should support that political position as well. Britain should be absolutely intolerant of every Islamist in this park. Every Muslim who is calling for Sharia law in this park should be deported. They should lose their citizenship and we should chuck them out of our country. And let's be clear what is at stake. In the last 3 years, Islamists have tried to murder 3 Christians in this park. 3 murder attempts of Christians in this park. Brothers and sisters, the Islamists are serious. They are not playing. They are determined to win. And that means, brothers and sisters, that we must be equally determined to win. We must be equally determined to destroy, not tolerate, not live in a multicultural society, not live side by side celebrating difference, but we must be absolutely determined in the United Kingdom and across the Western world to grind to the bone every Islamist network in the country, to send every Islamist scurrying into the sewers like a rat and there exterminate them as the filth that they are. We must not tolerate their speech, their politics, or their ambitions here in the UK. Because if you do, and if they succeed, we Christians will be persecuted.